All right, we are live on YouTube, but we are going to bring in our Facebook pages as well. Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. So that we're going to multiple platforms. And good morning. Welcome to the Falcons Podcast. My name is Scott Kennedy. I am your host today. I am in Atlanta. Over on this side is Nick Kendall, my co-host. He is in Seattle, so we are coast to coast with your football coverage on a lovely Wednesday morning. Wet in the South Wednesday morning. But we're going to get into several things today, including we'll talk a little bit about Pittsburgh Steelers, current state of affair with the Atlanta Falcons, including just how good a couple of their players have been, what it might cost to keep them, how it will affect their salary cap moving forward, and how they can construct a roster around guys like Chris Lindstrom. Nick, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. It's we had a pretty good snowstorm last night, which is rare for Seattle, given that we're right off the Pacific here. We're more Mediterranean than anything else in our temperatures out here. So it's going to be interesting getting into work today. It took me about an hour to do a drive yesterday that typically takes me about 10 minutes. So that was unfortunate, but I'm doing pretty well. Coffee's hot. It's tasty. Thanks, Patrick, out there in Hawaii, for supporting us, man. He's unbelievable how supportive he's been with his donations of the black liquid from heaven itself.
Nap in a cup. That's what I call it. Wake up in a cup. No, that's lioncoffee.com. One of our listeners just keeps us in coffee. He just sends it to us, and we send him a shout out to say thank you. So check out lioncoffee.com. Delicious. And Michael Ranquillo is already coming in from out west, out in Arizona. So he's up early with us. Says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. And Joe Cannon, always with us on Mondays and Wednesday mornings, coming in over on Facebook too. Keith Robbins coming in has a question. Good morning, Keith. He said, should I start CPAT, Cordero Patterson, this week in fantasy? Man, I'm always worried about starting Atlanta Falcons. I always used to draft Saints. I'm like, I'm jinxed. I'm a curse. If I, it's one of those hedge things. If I can curse their team, my fantasy team, and by ruining the Saints season, then I'm okay with that. And if the Saints are doing really well, then at least my fantasy team is going to do well. So I'm always looking to hedge on that type of stuff. Kevin coming in says, good morning. First time on live in a few weeks. Well, welcome back, my friend. We've missed you. So welcome back in. Looks like the Facebook algorithms are starting to reach out into the webosphere. So hit that like button as you come in and help reach more Atlanta Falcons fans just like you. Dominic Hamarillo coming in. Jaramillo, sorry. Says, good morning, Scott, Nick, and Dog Nation. It's Conference Championship Week. Go Dogs. Is it?
It is.
It is important. It's just not quite as important as it used to be.
There are some important games. I think that the ones I'm most interested in, so I think Michigan and Georgia are in regardless of the outcome. Mm-hmm. They're both going to win, but regardless of the outcome they're in, the Big 12 championship and the Pac-12 championship have my attention.
The ones I really hate to see, and we've seen it happen in the past, is when a team loses the conference championship and the team that didn't even play in it ends up leaping above them. Think Ohio State. If Michigan were to lose this and they bump Ohio State over it, that's the kind of stuff that's happened in the past. It just rubs me the wrong way. Like you've heard me say before, I refuse to call it a national championship because, that started when Colorado beats Nebraska. And this is a long time ago. Colorado beat Nebraska to go into the Big 12 championship game.
And Colorado being good at soccer at football must have been a long time ago.
They beat Nebraska. Nebraska still gets chosen to be the number 2 team and then got the brakes beat off by Miami. I'm like, why are they playing for a national championship when they didn't even win their own freaking division, let alone their conference? You're not even a Big 12 South, probably North, Big 12 North champion. You're certainly not my national champion. Yeah. So from that moment on, I started calling it a BCS champion. I'm like, all right, it's your tournament, BCS people. You can name your champion however you want to. Just don't tell me you're a national champion if you're not even champion of your own freaking division.
Yeah, it's going to change a lot, though, once you have the 12-team tournament coming up here soon. But
ACC with basketball, I call it an NCAA tournament champion because you're, basketball, that may be the worst at crowning the best team.
Yeah.
Is that in the World Series is really tough. I mean, because there's such fine margins between baseball. You play 162 games, they're separated by percentage points, man.
Yeah.
10 games in a 162 game season is one game in a 16 game season. That's different. 11 and 5 is, 110 and 50 is a huge team versus, 90 and 70, still a damn good baseball team. But, anyway, I digress.
I am
Rico Browner says, go Dogs, and SEC rules. The SEC does kind of rule. It does.
I think it might be, I guess the Big Ten championship is the least intriguing of this matchup because Purdue should get the brakes beat off them. But LSU versus Georgia, LSU has an incredible freshman that everybody's going to know the name of pretty soon, named Harold Perkins. Plays stack linebacker.
But then like a legacy.
He is a Harold Jr. He is a Harold Perkins Jr. So
okay. That sounds like a legacy to me. I'll have to look him up. I bet I watched his dad play.
Okay, well, he is unbelievable. If you get a chance, I think it was the Arkansas game. He's almost single-handedly won that game for LSU, where he had like 8 sacks and a strip sack, and he's a true freshman. And like this is the closest thing to Von Miller I've seen since Von Miller for like the bend and the twitch. He's a little smaller, but oh my god, he's fun to watch. We have probably the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in 2024 playing this weekend. We have ACC championship with North Carolina with their quarterback Drake May. Get to know him. And playing Clemson out there in the ACC. In the SEC, you have Caleb Williams with USC, probably the Heisman winner this year. Sorry, Stetson Bennett fans. No. Caleb Williams versus Utah, and that's a revenge game because Utah beat USC, handing them their only loss so far this season. So some good games. And Pac-12.
I'm in Atlanta. I'm in SEC country. This is a mix of SEC country, so it's not quite as passionate as the separate pockets, but still, the SEC championship game still matters here. Doesn't matter who's in it. It still matters here for sure.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. But let's get into our topic a little bit because we're going to turn today into the Thomas Dimitroff Appreciation podcast. I might start twitching as I do that. But yes, he did draft Chris Lindstrom in his second to last draft before he went. Thank you, Mr. Dimitroff. And Chris Lindstrom has turned out to be arguably the best offensive lineman, not offensive guard, but arguably the best offensive lineman in the NFL. He is in the discussions. Like, okay, guard versus tackle. I know, I get it. But he's played well enough that he's actually in that discussion. He's got 1 year left on his deal. So his 5th-year option was picked up. So he'll play on his 5th-year option next year. Then he's a free agent. I mean, you could absolutely franchise tag this guy so you could have 6 years of control because he's still just 25 years old. That's the fun part, Nick. He's just 25.
Yeah.
I want this guy to be Atlanta Falcon for the next
decade,
8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Would it be crazy to say he's the best OL in the league?
I think you can say that he's playing the best of any offensive lineman in the league. That doesn't make him the most valuable player at his position because he is a guard still, and just inherently, guards are less valuable than tackles because the body type and skill set and tasks just slightly less valuable. But he's been playing incredible. Number 1 graded offensive lineman via Pro Football Focus the last 2 weeks. Contract going to get paid an incredible contract. His contract's certainly going to show him like the number 1 guard or number one guard in football. But if you had to ask me right now, you twisted my arm, number 1 guy would be the number 1 guy on this list right now. It'd be Trent Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Just more skins on the wall, more proven. He's insane. But Chris Lindstrom is playing incredible football right now. And you're right. Shout out to Dimitroff. It took 4 years, but that's not unheard of for the offensive line investment to really start to come to fruition and you get the benefits of it.
Yeah, and Lindstrom's played well before. This isn't really a breakout year for him. He's been good for a couple years. This is a good year for Caleb McGarry, who's in a contract year, who is an unrestricted free agent after this season. That one is a breakout year for him. But Lindstrom's been good pretty much from the get-go. That was a good pick from Dimitroff. And then he followed up the next year with A.J. Terrell, another good first-round pick. We can go through. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to find a bigger critic in this planet than Thomas Dimitroff. I mean, I go all the way back to giving him hell for the Julio Jones trade back in 2011. That was probably 12 finished the 11 season because he was that fantastic, that mythical class of 08 in high school was AJ Green, Julio Jones. There were like 5 or 6 of those guys. That was like the 83 class of quarterbacks. If you're familiar with your history, that's Elway and Marino and all that bunch. Anyway, I digress. But I've got on the screen, for those of you who are listening after the fact, the PFF rankings for the offensive lineman, regardless of which position, tackle, guard, center. Number 1, but he only played 8 games. He's been hurt. So Trent Williams is number 1 with an overall grade of 93.2, and Chris Lindstrom is the number 2 overall player and the number 1 guard, and he's at 92.4. There are only 3 offensive linemen graded at 90 or above, and Christian Darrisaw is one of those as well. So I think, it's within an argument, and I'm not going to make that argument. I'm not going to say Chris Lindstrom's the best offensive lineman in the NFL. I put it in the title just for, to ask the question, is he? But what's interesting is he's in the discussion. You've got to mention, we're going to say, okay, who's the best lineman in the NFL? You're going to start rattling off a couple of names. And it's not going to take you long before you say Chris Lindstrom. He is in the discussion, whether or not he's there or not. And that is a good way to be for a 25-year-old offensive lineman that you have at least 2 more years of control of. But Nick, as a guard, what's it going to cost to keep him an Atlanta Falcon for the long term?
God, let me pull up Quentin Nelson's contract and
I was going to say,
copy and paste that over.
Quentin Nelson's contract.
Yeah, it's probably very similar, if not even, a 5% increase because he's the next one to get paid. That does make your roster building a little bit haphazard, paying a guard that much money. But Quentin Nelson signed a 4-year, $80 million contract with a $31 million signing bonus and a $60 million guaranteed. So that's probably what you're looking at for signing Chris Lindstrom. It's the cost of doing business. So that is what it is. But Quentin Nelson set the market last year. I don't think you can let Lindstrom go. There's no reason to, especially if you're trying to build a great offensive infrastructure. So he's going to get paid.
Yeah, I've got Spot Rack up right here, and I put this on average contracts, and the top 4 guys are 16 million plus. Top 5, Wyatt Teller is 14, and then Zach Martin is 14. You're coming 18 to 21 on a multi-year deal.
Yep.
For a guard. That's a little bit scary. A little bit scary putting that much money into it. But if you're going to want to keep him around, that's what's going to cost you. And again, we talk about the salary cap being a myth. You can work your way around the salary cap and lower values as long as players are playing at a good level. You can keep doing that. But as we've seen with Julio Jones, with Matt Ryan, with Deion Jones, as those guys start falling off, those cap numbers start becoming very, very real. Quentin Nelson here. So, you look at his cap number, despite that lofty number, his cap number is 12 with a dead cap of 30. And then in 2024, so he basically got a 3-year deal, 3-year including 60 guaranteed. So yeah, 20 million each for 3 years. And then these become the years 4 and 5 are basically club options because his cap hit becomes 10 million more than his dead cap hit. So you've got some issues at that point. And for some reason, let me see. For some reason, Scott Kennedy Sports dropped off. So we're sorry for that. Anybody happen to be watching in there? Wasn't working. We'll add that later. So you're talking 20 million minimum. That's what it's going to cost. The good news is Falcons have it. The Falcons have it coming in. And that was one of the things we wanted to talk about as far as the team building aspect of this. And now that the chat has opened up just a little bit, I want to say hello to some folks. And Roderick Cook saying, "What? I played the Dave Chappelle doing Little John for my son, and that is I'm not a hip hop person. I don't know if they're younger than Snoop Dogg and Dre and those guys. I don't know who they are. I know who Lil Jon, and he's old and he's from Atlanta. I know this, but I know who that is just because of Dave Chappelle. But he's saying, just joking, like Roderick was saying, that's out of the question. He can be better than the number one guy. But KB82 says, good morning, Kenny. Kenny Booker coming in. He says, who's been the stud and who has been the dud for the Falcons this season? I'll let you answer that one. Give you first crack.
I mean, we're talking about the stud right now. It's probably Chris Lindstrom, but I think you can also give a shout out to Cordell Patterson because the offense has gone like he has gone. So it's another reason that I'm not totally against an investment at running back for this team. Just the structure of how it's set up. You need a dude back there. And Cordell Patterson's been a dude for you. The dud's probably going to come on the defensive side of the ball. I guess against expectations.
This one's easy. Go ahead and say it because I will. I'll back you up.
I'm not sure. There's been a lot of duds on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm not going defense.
Oh, are you saying it's Mariota?
No, it's Kyle Pitts.
Oh God, it's hard for me to say that because
expectations.
Yeah,
against expectations for what you were hoping for in this season. Now I know all of the different reasons for it. Between him getting mugged at the line of scrimmage or anywhere, we've seen him getting held and drawing those penalties finally, but against expectations, against a first-year 1,000-yard season, only the second rookie tight end ever to do it. That's him. It's Kyle Pitts, and there's extenuating circumstances, but that's the first person that's going to come to mind for me. Stud, I'll go someone off the chart just a little bit, and I'm going Taquan Graham, defensive lineman against expectations. Taquan Graham has went from I'm sorry we have to start this guy, but he's all we got to being a plus starter in the NFL. He was really good, and his injury really hurts this team. It really did. So. On that note, dud, I could go center. Drew Dahlman's been disappointing. Hasn't been real good. And on defense, there's several to choose from. Again, I don't have high expectations for Ade Ogundeji, but he's got to be better. They've got to get better there. Arlen McKetty has played really, really well. Yeah. So,
did you know? Go ahead. Against expectations here. This is one that's I heard this and I was like, oh wow, I would never have guessed that. Cornerback to give up the most touchdowns in the NFL this year, AJ Terrell.
Yeah. Part of that is Michael Thomas got him twice in the first game on 2 perfectly thrown balls and 2 amazing catches. AJ was in coverage on both of them.
Yep. That was a surprising stat, nonetheless.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a ton. I mean, he doesn't. I only remember like 3 or 4, maybe. But no, AJ's still been good. It makes a huge difference when he's out there for sure. Eric coming in. So good morning, fellas. Hope you had a good holiday. To you as well. So I was at the Commanders game and we were there in force, rain and all. Wish Mariota could have finished that last drive. Good for you. And when I heard you the loudest, when I was positive there were a lot of Falcons there, Eric, when Younghoe Koo was coming out to kick, you could hear it. Y'all showed up well. You hear, Koo. I'm like, yeah. And some of those guys, players, especially with an Asian background, the community rallies around him no matter who he's playing for. I've seen it, in basketball. I've seen it in international football. So I wasn't sure if that was some of the Washington fans just cheering on Younghoe Koo, but we heard y'all there for sure. And so I hope you had a good time. I know it didn't quite turn out the way you wanted to, but it was a hell of a game. And there were a lot of empty seats, so it was probably a good percentage of Falcons fans there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you guys, it was a good game. Didn't turn out like you'd hoped, but Washington's a garbage franchise. I mean, did you see, not to go too much on them, did you see the Sean Taylor memorial? I
didn't. Was it good?
No.
It wasn't.
No, it was very bad.
That's a shame. I was hoping they at least got that right. He deserves it.
Nope, it was. They used like a wire.
Count on the University of Miami to take care of that for us.
Yeah, I guess so. But it was. Yeah, it's stunk. It was really disappointing. Kevin Knapp, good to see you, Kevin. Rocking Southern Miss there. Good morning, guys. Always good to see you, Kevin. Hope you're doing well. We appreciate you. We got AE coming in saying good morning, fellas. Good to see you, AE. Dave's also in the house. Good morning, guys. Our guy Ethan coming in. Good afternoon, gents in Falcons country. Is it Falcons country? Is that what you?
I've lived here most of my life, and I don't really we never really claim anything as far as nation. I think you might go with nation, maybe.
Falcons
But
Nation.
I'm not even. You don't really even say that. It's just Dirty Birds.
Dirty Birds,
or
yep.
Rise Up has been around long enough that became a thing. But Dirty Birds was around since '98. 98 with Jamal Anderson. That's been around a while. But it's when you walk around Auburn, you say War Eagle like you say aloha, hello. It's kind of a greeting. And when you go by a Falcons fan, let's say you're walking through an airport out of town, you see someone the Falcons fan. Usually you'll say like Rise Up, something like that. But I don't know that there is a definite Falcons Nation country, not like Broncos country, where you will be corrected if you say Broncos Nation or something like that. Yeah. You will be corrected on that one.
Yep. And they're talking also about Sean Taylor's memorial here, saying it's trash, and Eric coming in saying it's literally just a wireframe with a jersey on it. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's gross. And,
okay. No, I thought they did like I thought they at least did like a good video or something.
A statue. I mean, they had like a thing, but like the actual memorial itself, it kind of like was unveiled, and it was kind of just like a muted cheer. But give it to Dan Snyder to do something horrible, but it sucked.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on that one. Kenny comes back and he says, Scott, did you see the U.S. versus Iran match? Kenny, what do you think? Come on. Yes, I watched it in earnest. I watched that one very, very closely. Great game, and the Netherlands are going to be tough. Everybody's going to be tough
from here on out
at this stage.
Yeah.
I've said for a long, long time, when people ask me, and it looks like our Falcons, we're having trouble streaming to Facebook. This may be an issue, so hopefully y'all will stay here. It won't drop off. Should be okay, I hope. Otherwise, hop over to YouTube, youtube.com/C/Scott Kennedy. People would ask me, I had a lot of Americans aren't international fans. They're like, why we missed the World Cup? I'm like, well, these guys aren't good enough. The same group missed the Olympics. And the way I try to put it is like, do you remember the 2014 World Cup? Who was a hero of that? Tim Howard had like 25 saves. Yeah. Tim Howard is just a couple of years younger than I am. I was 40. So that was 14. I was 41 years old. Howard's like 39. Okay. I didn't have a coach who played soccer. The hero of our World Cup, I played soccer my whole life. The hero of our World Cup grew up in a generation where they didn't even have coaches around here that played the freaking game. Okay. So yeah, see, Eric says Facebook drop, just to let you know. So let me see if I can re-add. I don't know if it'll come back on or not. Remove. Facebook is having trouble. We'll try and hit those again. See if I can get those back on. Sorry about that, y'all. Looks like we could be back live on Facebook. Facebook is having some trouble today. But now my son is 13. He's an 09. He plays for a Honduran international. He played on Honduras international team and was an MLS Golden Boot winner, which means he scored the most goals in the MLS. That's his team.
That's awesome.
This is Metro Atlanta. This is Suburbanville, Metro Atlanta. This is just one, area of the country, in a big country. El Salvador's all-time leading scorer coaches the same age group in Forsyth, in Cumming, in Forsyth County. Not here. The instruction, the participation, and the exposure to a high level of soccer. Once we got the Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley guys gone, now you're fielding guys out there who play for Chelsea. They play for Juventus. They play for Barcelona. They play for Sevilla, Leeds, Fulham. The top levels in the world. Christian Pulisic goes on. Oh my God. His replacement's either going to be a guy that plays at Leeds in the Premier League or plays at Dortmund in the Bundesliga in Germany. Not some never was from the MLS and Columbus Crew.
Yep.
It's a different
Quality.
It's a different era. The era of advancing to the round of 16 should be the goal, should be the minimum standards for the United States, U.S. soccer from now on for the rest of eternity. So anyway, now I won't talk anymore about that.
I mean, I'm excited for, hopefully I'm still out here in in Seattle in 2026, because we got Seattle right here hosting, and right up the way, only an hour and a half drive, we got Vancouver. So I'm going to have my choice of games. I don't think there's any area in the next World Cup that is so close in terms of stadium distance. So going to be fun to pick between that. And it'll be fun to see how the U.S. does progressing. Netherlands, the Dutch are a damn good team. I don't think they've ever actually won a World Cup, which is shocking considering how consistently good they've been. But it's going to be a heck of a matchup. I think the U.S. probably loses this matchup 8 out of 10 times, 7 out of 10 times. But they're the youngest team in the World Cup, and they advance. So it's going to be fun regardless.
Yeah, this is a good young team. This particular group of players, their best shot should be in the next cycle.
Yeah, they got to figure out how to score.
They're playing this one. It just kills me that in a country of all of these people, we got 6'3", 4'3" guys all over the place, and just pay one of them when he's 5. 5 years old. Just find the dads of a wide receiver dad and say, we're gonna pay you $10 million a year for the next 15 years. We want your son to be a soccer player.
Let's abolish basketball, and 90% of those guys can go to football.
Yeah, you can go to football when you're 20.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to the Atlanta Falcons here right now, because I want to talk about if you give if you end up paying Lindstrom $20 million a year, what's that do to your salary cap? What's that do to your salary cap?
It probably puts you in a situation where you're very expensive on the offensive line with Jake Matthews. It probably puts you in a situation, though, where you are looking for your contingency plan at left tackle to lower the value of the overall expenditures on the offensive line by going with a young, cost-controlled left tackle. Now, the cheat code is a young, cost-controlled quarterback, because that just covers everything then on the roster. But it's probably Jake Matthews' contract. You're probably looking for a way to get out of that. That's one reason that I think in this upcoming draft, you might be looking tackle sooner than you think, because of the way Matthews' contract sets up. Obviously, if McGarry walks, it's a totally different conversation. But Matthews is very expensive. He's been fine. I think you'd be okay keeping him as well, but probably not to the extent where he's getting paid, top 5, top 10 tackle money.
Yeah, and like you said, if I've got, and he's getting to be that age. I'm so used to navigating Spot Rack, and it's not responding either. So there might be some Amazon Web Services or something that are having some problems today. But Jake Matthews is starting to get a little bit older. So if we talk 2 years of control of, Jake Matthews is 30 this year, he'll be 31 next year, 32 in 2024. The next year's cap hit for him is ridiculous. It's $34 million. That said, if I look at Cap Tracker for the Atlanta Falcons, and I've got this one, what's interesting to me is even with those big numbers, because Lindstrom's on a big contract next year because his 5th-year option has been picked up. So even with those big numbers of Jake Matthews, with a $34 million cap hit, with Chris Lindstrom at a $13 million cap hit, the Atlanta Falcons right now still have the second most available cap space in the entire NFL.
Yeah. And
that's with $50 million between Lindstrom and Jake Matthews. They're still number 2.
Yeah.
So that's good. So another $7 million for 2024 to give him a 20-year average isn't that big a hit. You're not going from, when we talk about the Denver Broncos and Draymond Jones going from 2 to 20.
Yeah.
That's a hit. That's a 10x number. This is incremental. This is a 50% increase, and they can clear up more than that if they restructure Jake Matthews' contract. I just don't necessarily want them to. Look at Michael Ranquillo throwing down on YouTube. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, you're always here and always good for the show. You're awesome. The support that you show us on social and in the chat, and always such a gentleman when you're in here too, which is definitely appreciated. But he says, Scott, who's your favorite Falcons player to ever play for the Falcons? That one's easy. I've said it enough. Nick should be able to say it.
I don't remember the name. It's the defensive lineman from
linebackers. Hammer. It's Jesse Tuggle.
Tuggle. I was almost said Tuttle.
Yeah, just Jesse Tuggle. He actually lives in my neighborhood now.
Okay.
I live in his neighborhood. Jesse the Hammer Tuggle. Jesse was an undrafted free agent who was a walk-on, I think, at Valdosta State, which was a 1AA football team. So completely undersized, undervalued, 5'11" maybe on a good day, and played in the real dog days of the Atlanta Falcons. Not quite all the 80s. The 80s were the worst. The 90s were still pretty bad. But was, he had a couple 200 tackle seasons, multi-time Pro Bowler. Just for me, Mr. Atlanta Falcon, Jesse Tuggle was my all-time favorite player.
I mean, you didn't ask me, but mine's probably Grady Jarrett. And he's the current, but I love Grady.
Similar. Well, they're related, Jesse's his dad.
Seriously? I did not know that. That's okay. Well, that's wild. Grady Jarrett, loved him at Clemson. I remember screaming at the TV in that draft to draft him from round 2 on. The Broncos ended up taking Ty Sembrilo, who Falcons fans, you remember that name, and Jeff Hireman, and I think Grady falls all the way to like the 2nd pick in the 5th round or something similar. I loved Grady Jarrett coming out of Clemson. I was a big fan, and he's been awesome.
He's so good. I mean, he's so good. The motor on him, for the same reason I like my favorite Chelsea player is N'Golo Kante. He's undersized, high motor, overachiever, perfect gentleman. Just the kind of guy you want. Charles Barkley says we're not role models, but it's like when I've got kids, and I was a fan of Jesse Tuggle and his style of play before I ever had kids, but it's like, I want you to play like that guy. That's who I want you to be. That's how I want you to conduct yourself on the field at all times, and even conduct yourself off the field from what we can tell. But, sportsmanship. But, Grady Jarrett goes out there and he wants to bury you, but he'll do it with a smile on his face and he'll help you up after. I just love those guys. And KB says Brett Favre. I've put this one out there enough that this was a trivia question the most diehardest of diehard Falcon fans could never answer. But I put this out there enough it might have taken off a little bit. But I always said, who was the pick? Because the Falcons got a 1st-round pick for Brett Favre. They drafted him in the 2nd. And of course, it was like the 33rd, 34th pick. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They're always picking top 5. In the 2nd round, they used the 2nd round on him. Then they spun him to the Packers for a 1st-rounder the next year. Who did they use that 1st-round pick on? And nobody. I have never come up with anybody that knew the answer to that one. It was same as Tony Smith, running back. And every time Kevin comes in here and shows me that Southern Miss Golden Eagles, I think of Tony Smith right there, because Tony Smith was a running back that the Atlanta Falcons traded Brett Favre for, and you've never heard of Brett Favre. That draft the next year was horrendous. I think that next year was Steve Empman, number 1, Quentin Coriat, number 2, and you start looking up and down. It's like there isn't anybody they could have taken that would have eased the pain of losing Brett Favre in that entire 1st round. Maybe they should have just held on to the quarterback. I'm getting all kinds of error messages about Facebook right now, so apologies, everybody. We'll see if we can't get that fixed. But Dion was amazing. Drafted 5th overall. And that draft is what I've used this story before. Scott, how'd you get into this? Sorry, Nick. Now you got me going on the history things. Scott, how'd you get into this? I really started following the draft in '88. The Falcons had the number 1 overall pick. Excuse me. And they used it on Andre Bruce. I was 15 years old. '89 draft, I was 16. Formative years here. The number 1 pick, Troy Aikman. Number 2, Tony Mandarich. Who, you might say? The incredible bust. Do a look on Tony Mandarich. Number 3, Barry Sanders. Number 4, Derek Thomas. Number 5, Deion Sanders. Well, I'm just really starting to pay attention to the draft for the first time. Little did I know that it wasn't always going to be like that. But that draft made an impression and helped, shape the way my life kind of went. Love Jamal Anderson. Fat. Another story there. Again, apologies, Nick. Think of something you want to say, and I'll let you go here. But again, you're walking down memory lane here with me. Jamal Anderson was my favorite player in '98 at the time. Jesse was on that team. Jesse's my all-time favorite, but my favorite was Jamal Anderson. Just again, he was unheralded and ran like a devil. Just you guys just slid off of him. Started dating who ended up being my wife at the time. I had a Christmas present. It's an Anderson jersey. Well, by God, if it wasn't a number 5 and a Morton Anderson jersey. So tells you a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons when they're selling the Kickers jersey at the time. But by God, you bet your ass I wore that Morton Anderson jersey everywhere. And in '98, when he kicked the field goal to send the Falcons to the Super Bowl, everybody was like, "Yeah, Morton." So anyway, good times.
And before we get on out of here, Dane Brugler just released his first mock draft of the year. So if you're curious about that, he does have the Falcons 15 overall, taking an edge rusher from Florida State by the name of Jared Verse. Jared Verse been pretty good this year at Florida State for the Seminoles. He's a transfer from Albany from last year, and I remember he was put on the map last year because Albany played Syracuse, and he had like 4 sacks in that game, which is a massive competition change from Albany. I think they're like the Terriers or something. Albany. There's an Albany, New York, and then down here it's Albany. But there's an Albany, Georgia, but you can get away with Albany. Albany out there in the capital of New York. But Jared Verse, and he writes, Falcons ranked near the bottom of the league in generating pressure from the defensive line. Again, a little better than last year, but still, especially off the edges. Transfer from FCS level Albany. Jared Verse is an active pass rusher with get-off speed and power through his frame to deconstruct blocks in different ways. He's among the best in the country at making plays in the backfield in enemy territory. 14.5 tackles for loss this season. So edge rusher, you 100% do need more talent on the defensive line. You're picking 15. You're not going to get one of those blue chippers at the top because you've been too good for that this year, picking in the middle of the draft right now. So Jared Verse, probably about time to start getting to know a lot of these edge rushers and cornerbacks in the upcoming draft. And unfortunately, all 4 of the big cornerbacks were off the board by pick 15. Does that leave you with another year Marcus Mariota at quarterback? Or Ritter. Yeah, or Ritter. You'll see. We'll see. Maybe they want to give Ritter a year of seasoning. I don't know. I'm still don't know what's going on there. I can't quite figure it out as far as, if Mariota's that much better and he's not that great, then Ritter's not going to be the guy next year either. Mm-hmm. Because Mariota's okay, but he's okay, but he's not someone that's going to stop you from trying to upgrade the position, So, and if he's that much better, hey, we're trying to win a division here. We're 5-7. We're only a game out of first place. 2 games under 500, but only a game out of first place. NFL. Then Ritter doesn't give you a better chance to win, and Mariota is not really good enough to be a long-term answer. You still have question marks at quarterback going into next season. So that's going to be interesting to me. You absolutely need an edge. I mean, we've talked about this before. You need probably 2 more corners, an edge. I need another safety. I need another interior defensive lineman to go with Jarrett and Graham. Right tackle, I think they'll probably re-sign McGarry. I think that'll be taken care of. I could use a long-term answer at left guard, an upgrade at center, and then more playmakers at wide receiver, and then et cetera, et cetera. But again, the quarterback position's gonna be a big question, which is why I was jumping up and down for 6 months saying draft Justin Fields, but that ship has sailed. Yeah. Well, the quarterback, you had 3 of them go off the board, and only 3 in the draft. All 3 came off the board before the Falcons. 14 overall, you got Will Levis from Kentucky. 5 overall, you had C.J. Stroud. And number 1 overall, you had Bryce Young. So that seems to be the case in this draft. And I was incorrect, actually. There was a cornerback on the board, Cam Smith at South Carolina. He was still available, but Joey Porter Jr., Christian Gonzalez, and Ringo at Georgia all came off the board. So, and sorry, Broncos country, you have Dane Brugler has the Broncos going with defense in this draft because there are no offensive linemen worthy of the pick, I think, at selection 26. So, well, the Falcons are going to have plenty of holes to fill because most of their team are 25. Like I said, they're all either free agents
cuttable guys with one more year on their contract or on rookie contracts. So Lorenzo Carter, Caleb McGarry, Zacchaeus, Oliver, Evans, Damian Williams, he's toast. He played one series. Fullback Keith Smith, safety Eric Harris, guard Elijah Wilkinson, Demir Bird, Afridi. I mean, they've got 30 guys that are on one-year deals. So they're going to need players everywhere. And look at Ethan coming in here, finishing us off too. He says, cheers and have a good weekend. Appreciate it. We'll see you. Hopefully see you tomorrow morning on Broncos for breakfast to knock us into the weekend ahead of knockout rounds in the World Cup. Always a good time. But appreciate the support from Michael and from the DWI guys, Ethan, from over in London, coming in orange today. Again, talking about free agency, there's a ton of them, but instead of shopping at the highest free agent is Lorenzo Carter with the average of 3.5. Caleb McGarry's at 2.5. You start looking at these guys that are brought in for starters. Rashawn Evans, linebacker, was 1.75. Eric Harris is a reserve safety, 1.2. Elijah Wilkinson at left guard was 1.2. You've gotten good value for these guys, but hopefully you're shopping at a tier higher. Instead of the $1 million guys, you're hopefully getting maybe some of those $3 million guys. And that way you've got a little more depth, a little more competition. And when an injury comes in, you don't have quite the drop off. And for me, it's been most evident for me, Nick, in the defensive backfield.
Yeah. Yeah, you need some horses back there, no doubt. So hopefully you get one of those cornerbacks. Excited to kind of start to dig into those guys too. This is a solid class at cornerback, though. I think there are 5 worthy first-round guys. Illinois has another guy also that's really good out there. So it'll be fun. Start peeling back that onion, but we still got some football games left that are meaningful for the Falcons.
And the Falcons should be around, 15 sounds about right now.
Yep.
They're at 5-7. They've got winnable games against Pittsburgh. They got winnable games. They still have the Saints. They still have the Buccaneers. This is Atwater went in that 89 draft too. Like I said, that was a draft that made an impression on this 16-year-old impressionable kid in 89. They're not all like that for sure. Yeah. Like I said, look at I think it was the 91 draft, because I think the Falcons took Favre in 90 possibly, and then traded him in 91. And the 91 draft was Entman and was Steve Entman was the number 1. And that first round was god awful. Just horrendous. Not all drafts are created equally. That's for sure. Eric says, who's going to hit the free agent in the offseason you think we should target? I'll tell you what, when I look at the free agents, one of the first things I do, as was Nick has said, where you could use an upgrade and you can get a premier player for not a lot of money, is running back. You should be able to target a wide receiver. Instead of going after Damian Williams, kick it up a notch.
There's a lot in this class.
See, kick it up a notch and see if it's a good free agent running back class. So let me see, 2023 all teams running back.
The big 3, there are 3 big ones, and we'll see if they get franchised or not. But Josh Jacobs leads the NFL right now in rushing yards. You have Saquon Barkley, who is the straw that stirs the drink there for the Giants. And also you have Tony Pollard, who's been incredible this year for the Cowboys. And there's 10 more running backs that are worth talking about in this upcoming class.
Kareem Hunt is there.
Mm-hmm.
So the highest paid guys now that are scheduled to be free agents, and all of these guys, the oldest one is 27, is Kareem. Jamal Williams is 27 also. He's in Detroit. He's at $3 million. There's Deontay Foreman. He signed a good contract for a guy who was working on his trucking company, was cut by the Falcons. He signed a $2 million contract. But you got Josh Jacobs there, who's 24 years old right now. He won't turn 25 till like February. Jamal Williams leading the league in touchdowns. Rashad Penny out of Seattle. He's on 6. That's a good chunk of change. Kareem Hunt, lower tread because he's backing up Nick Chubb, but the Falcons signed a backup in the teens, back up to a San Diego Chargers player, back up to LaDainian Tomlinson. It worked out pretty well. Didn't have a lot of trend. Michael Turner was a freaking beast in Atlanta. Was a beast.
And I got some names.
Juan Barkley still just 25.
David Montgomery also going to be one, but been a good running back for the Bears despite their offensive ineptitude. Miles Sanders has been really good for the Eagles. You got Jamal Williams, who leads the NFL in touchdowns last I saw. You got Damian Harris, who's been a solid number 2 for the Patriots. You got Jeff Wilson, who the Dolphins traded for. You got Devin Singletary. You got Raheem Mostert, and you got Rashad Penny. I mean, Rashad Penny, when he's been healthy, has been awesome. He's always injured, but this is a really good running back crop. And also, that
J.J. Watt's scheduled to be a free agent. J.J. Watt, there you go. Ngakoue from Indianapolis. There's not a lot of the older, expensive guys that really excite me at edge. That's where I think you probably need to go draft. That's what makes sense. But interior defensive line, like I said, you're not shopping off the Chicago Bears waiver wire anymore. You're actually looking at some better players. I look at defensive line. Fletcher Cox is scheduled to be a free agent. Wouldn't that be interesting? He's from the South. Robert Quinn, that's who I was looking at, Nick, was Javon Hargrove is supposed to be a free agent. He's 30. That would make a difference. He'd be a difference maker. He's on 13 right now. You've got the money to bring in a guy like that. So target the right guys, get them in flexible deals. If you have to pay a little bit more upfront, so be it. But it should be a really fun offseason of building this team. This team hasn't had any money. I mean, the stories I've written on the players they've picked up have done well because nobody knows who the hell they are. Wait, they signed who? You're gonna bring in some guys that have some name recognition now, and then the draft you'll bring in a guy that can play right away. Several, hopefully, which will mean there will be some decisions made on some guys like Ade Ogundeji. Does he make the roster? Frank Darby, some of the first draft class, just some of those guys, do they stick around? You got Matt Hennessy at center. Do some of those guys end up sticking around? But with enough free agents on 1 year's deals, it's going to be a huge offseason for these Falcons, and they have the money to play with.
It's going to be a big one. We'll see how it plays out for them, and it's going to be definitely a fun one. And this is an ascending team. Hopefully Arthur Smith can continue to build his vision, and hopefully we have some more meaningful football games down the stretch here with the craptastic NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, you could use another wide receiver too.
Yeah.
So all of those type of things. And Eric says, as long as Felipe doesn't make the 53 again, I'll be okay. Yeah, he didn't offer a ton at tight end, and he has no future at quarterback in this league. I just spoke in a definitive, and I hate doing that because then it'll come back to bite me. But he's not a good enough thrower for this league. So we'll see. He's been working in on special teams a little bit. But, yeah, I agree with you on that one, Eric. On that note, Nick, I think we'll probably get out of here. We're about 45 minutes. I have to try and hook our Facebook feeds back up. For some reason, StreamYard dropped us out of there today. But as always, you can catch us after the fact on YouTube live and then at falconspodcast.com. If you want to listen to us after the fact, maybe you want to start up, should probably intro that. Hey, you don't want to watch this whole thing? Well, grab the pod. I should probably say, hey, you can listen to that. But falconspodcast.com gives you all of your listening options. Spreaker, Apple Pods, Google Pods, all of those type of things. Spotify, we're on all those. So tell a friend, give us a rating, all those type of things. But Nick, probably time to get out of here. We will be back tomorrow morning on Mile High Huddle for Broncos for Breakfast on YouTube. So until then, looking forward to a winnable game. Nick, it should feel like a home game from the Steelers. The Steelers fans pack the dome when they're down here. Lots of Midwestern transplants. Not that Pittsburgh's quite Midwest, but I think a steel town. Western PA kind of being in Ohio, Akron, where I was from, kind of Midwest.
It's Big Ten country.
Yeah, so a lot of those people came down here in the 70s and early 80s, including my parents. So we came down from Ohio, and lots of Steeler fans will be in attendance this weekend. So hopefully the Falcons keep playing well at home. We will find out, and then we will be back on Monday to discuss the game. So until then, appreciate you being here. Thanks to Michael. Thanks to Ethan for throwing down the super chats. And we'll see y'all on Monday.
Yeah.